Hello there, everybody. Kyle Nedner here from the Indy Star. Wanted to talk a little bit of high school football as we get into the off season now, and have wrapped up the state finals, being about 3 weeks ago now. Hard to believe it's been that long already, but great season. Finished up with the 5A game on the Saturday night with Decatur Central winning their first championship. Brownsburg won the 6A title, their first championship in 39 years. A lot of great stories, throughout the year, and a lot of new teams winning state championships. Adams Central making it back and finally winning it after three in a row. Losing in 1A was a great story in itself, and a pretty fun weekend. Very well attended. It was one of the highest attended in the 6A era, especially that Friday when the 2A, 4A, and 6A games were played, and that Westfield Brownsburg game was sensational. So really, felt the energy in the building certainly all weekend. But to get to more current topics, that's been a little while now. But wanted to touch on some of the news this week, and first off, wanted to touch on Mark Zackery winning Mr. Football. And it's always one of the coolest things that we are able to do every year at the Indy Star is present that award. It's not like we decide who wins it, but to be able to kind of surprise the player and have his family there and his coaches, and they can kind of decide how they want to surprise him or what they want to say. And I just love leaving that up to them to decide what they want to do or how they say it. And we set it up a little bit as far as the time and the date and those sorts of things, but then they kind of do the rest, and it's always fun to just kind of stand in the background and watch that unfold. And certainly Mark Zackery, very emotional. His dad was the one who said something to him there, said, all your hard work is paid off. And it was, you could tell Mark was, I don't know if he was not necessarily shocked that he won it, but definitely shocked in the in the moment there, and that was really neat. And he was on. It was sort of a split year where I kind of thought it would be when you have such a good senior class. And Zackery ended up getting 34% of the ballots, which that might not sound like a ton, but out of the say on the other hand, there are. And I don't know exactly what the total number of voters were, but they're up to 1,800 people eligible in the IFCA now who have the ability to vote for this award. And again, this is only limited to the Mr. Football Position Award winners. So, you're down to what is it, 9 or 10 overall now that are actually up for the big award. But I think a better way to do it now, now that you can have instead of, it used to be where 10 coaches in each class would vote for the big award. Now you have a wider section of people able to vote for this, and I think that's better. And that was changed after the 2018 vote, and not to say I think Jack Kaiser's gone out and proved he was very deserving of that award, and we don't need to relitigate that race with David Bell, but I think they just found that there's a better way to do it, get more voters involved, where it's not just in that year especially, Kaiser was able to sweep the 1A, 2A, and almost all of the 3A, and pretty much won the award based on that. So now that's probably not likely to happen anymore. So you just get a better cross section of people voting for the award. So anyway, Zachary wins. He had 34% of the votes. John Anthony Hall had 19%. He was the Mr. Football Position Award winner at receiver. Mark Zackery was at defensive back, although he did play receiver as well, and he had a big impact on special teams. Him and John Anthony Hall very similar in their numbers and their accomplishments. Also basketball players. So very similar. I will think of them together a lot. When you think about the players of this current era, with just their overall athleticism. John Anthony Hall, of course, he's a second in the state last year in the long jump too, and a state champion in track, a state champion in basketball, and Mark also a state champion in basketball and also in football. So, and then third place was Jerron Thomas out of Concord. He had 16% of the votes. He was the running back, Mr. Football Position winner. Who's going on to play at Purdue next season. So those three were the top three. Normally that's the case as far as the running backs and receivers. A lot of times get into that top, just because those are the guys who oftentimes have the numbers. You have the overall statistics. Quarterback this year was Jackson Willis. He did not get top three. I think he might have, but he was injured at the last couple of games of the season, unable to finish the season because of that broken bone in his hand. But he obviously had great credentials as well. Really, anybody who won Mr. Football Position Award is going to be, have great credentials. But normally that's what you see: the running backs, receivers, and quarterbacks. And then, like I said, Zackery is actually defensive back, but I think won it in part because of everything he did on offense. He ended up this season. He ended up having over 1,000 yards receiving. Uh, you know, 1,036 receiving, 58 catches, 12 TDs. He had almost 2,000 receiving yards and 21 TD catches for his career. So, had a real impact on offense as well. So it wasn't like he was just a defensive guy. But he did have 14 interceptions also on the defensive side for his career. 8 of those were this season. He actually had 4 TDs also in the Brownsburg Ben Davis sectional game, which Ben Davis ended up losing that lead late, and Brownsburg goes on to win and then wins the state title. So who knows? You look back at that and you're like, man, I wonder what would have happened if Ben Davis had won that game. I think probably still would have been an underdog against Lawrence North in the regional. But who knows? I mean, they were a team that was playing better at the end of the year. They ended up 5-6, and that looks weird for Mr. Football to be 5-6. But like I said, a lot of, he just had a lot of credentials even before the season from a team perspective. So, you can't. There's some years where it's, maybe the winner. And it doesn't happen very often, but the winner is more individual award based or individual numbers than he is team accomplishments. That's certainly not the case in Zackery's situation. So Zackery wins Mr. Football, going on to Notre Dame. He is actually out with a thumb. He had a procedure on his thumb about 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago. So his basketball season's sort of in limbo. I mean, I don't know exactly when. I think, hopefully Don Carlisle actually brought him in to the office or to the locker room yesterday, as we were, getting ready for him to be awarded Mr. Football. And he was the one who brought him in as basketball coach. And, I know he's still hopeful that he might be able to play some this year, but, and there is time. I mean, there's 2+ months left of the season, 2.5 months until the sectional starts. So I think still realistic he could get back and play some, but we'll see. I mean, it's still, I would understand for his sake if he just wanted to kind of move on to Notre Dame and start to get ready for that part of his journey. He's going to be up there tomorrow to watch the IU game. I know that's going to be a fun experience for him, but yeah, so he's Mr. Football 2024. I think well deserved. I almost heard 0 every year. You kind of hear. I mean, and honestly, it seems like recently it's been fairly obvious who the choice was going to be. Maybe not quite as much this year, just because Ben Davis didn't have a great finish, but I think Zackery had a pretty good lead. Even going into the year, and then his numbers were really outstanding again. So not to say. He certainly deserved it. But I think even in the past years, it's been, Josh Ringer last year, I think it was pretty obvious he was going to win. In the past few years, I think it's been, somewhat that way, most of the time anyway. So, but I heard almost no complaints. I'm sure there are some. I think John Anthony Hall certainly had a good argument for it. But I didn't hear a whole lot as far as that goes. And then I did take a look next year. For the potential front runners going into next year, I think and I start with a list of 10 and kind of work from there. And I'm not even saying even those 20 names, there may be somebody not on that list who ends up winning it next year. I don't I'm certainly not locked into that 10 and even down to the 20. But I think you start with that group, I would say, and. To me, I think Jet Goldsberry from Heritage Hills, he is certainly, and I think a lot of the boxes that you check are have you won a state championship already? And he did that this year. He won a 3A title with Heritage Hills. He's going to have a chance to, play in 4A next year. And I think they'll have a chance there. In some ways, 3A maybe in their area of the state might be even tougher. With having to go through Gibson Southern and Evansville Memorial, and the teams that play down in that direction in 3A are really really tough year in and year out. But Goldsberry was over. He was over 1,800 passing yards, 26 passing TDs this year. And he really runs the ball. That's what he does so well. And he was 1676 on the ground with 28 rushing TDs. He also played defense and he punted for Heritage Hill. So he checks all those boxes. He has over 3,200 passing and rushing yards, both, for his career. So really has the numbers. He has a state title. I don't know if he'll be a quarterback in college, but he's certainly going to be, somebody who's going to have the credentials, I think, and especially if he wins a title next year, to be right in that mix. A very impressive player in the state finals a couple weeks ago. Another guy, Jeremy Finch Jr. from Warren Central. He's a defensive guy, and it's a tougher position to win from. Like I said, Zackery was technically a defensive back position winner, but Finch is a defensive end, and he doesn't have the offensive numbers to go with it. But he's a wrecking ball. I mean, he had on a team of that was that was absolutely loaded at the defensive line. He led the team with 92 tackles, 57 solo, 24 for a loss. So I mean, he definitely did the job. 7 sacks, and he's also a big time recruit, which that doesn't necessarily matter for this award, but IU, Purdue, Michigan, Notre Dame, he's got all kinds of offers. Oklahoma. Had a chance to talk to him recently and hoping to write a story here before too long about him. But Jeremy Finch definitely belongs in that conversation. Deacon King's another one from Westfield. He started off playing a lot on the defensive side. Definitely last year was more of a defensive player, almost predominantly, I think entirely defensive player at safety. Came in this year and it was kind of splitting time with Webster at running back, and then kind of became just the primary guy in the backfield. He ended up going for over 1,400 rushing yards and 18 TDs. Put up great numbers. His team made the state finals, so he didn't win a state title, but he does have that experience of being in the state finals. And then another one who has that experience is Casimir Hicks, and he actually won a state championship from Decatur Central. Hicks, super fast, had 877 receiving yards and almost 500 rushing yards this year. And then he was also an impact player as a kickoff returner. Had 2 TDs in that aspect, and then had 2 TDs on defense. So Casimir Hicks, I think, belongs in that mix, and those are 4. I listed 10 and then added 10 more. So you can check that out. That's at IndyStar.com. You could go through everybody, but you can also just read it and see. And like I said, that's not like I'm not saying that's a list that's the candidate list. I'm saying that's kind of a starting point. We can certainly revisit that when the time comes. At the start of the 2024 season or 2025 season, excuse me. But you never know, how things transpire between now and then. It could be a lot different. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the coaching changes that we've seen here in the last couple weeks. And this has been a year where, I think it's been maybe a little bit more than we've seen in past years. Wednesday night, Warren Central had their opening when Mike Kirshner decided to step down. Still the AD there, and I think I talked to Mike late in the season, and definitely got the impression he was probably going to be done at the end of the season, and then he made that decision right after Warren Central lost to Center Grove in the regional. But I know he did talk to JT Whitaker about the position and was very positive about the future of the Warren Central program. And I was able to talk to JT last night. He was the offensive coordinator at Brownsburg, so he has state title to his resume. He coached under John Hart. He's also coached under Kirshner before at Ben Davis and at Lawrence Central with Jason West when Jason was at LC. So he has and I know people might you might look at Whitaker's resume and wonder well, he doesn't have head coaching experience. He does actually have a little bit. He was a head coach briefly at Washington when they were restarting their program. But I do understand, people wonder, well, why doesn't he have any head coaching experience or why are they getting a guy who doesn't have that. But I would say from being able to coach under the coaches he's been under, I would say that's about as good of an experience as you could have. Also, and very interesting when I was talking to him last night, they have hired Pat Echeverria to be the defensive coordinator. He's going to move over from being a head coach at Eastern Hancock, which he had a lot of success there in two different tenures at Eastern Hancock, and he's decided to come over to be the DC under Whitaker. So he's already got a guy and he's been a head coach at Zionsville, a head coach at Pike. A guy who has 6A experience previously will be also on his staff. And Whitaker said he didn't know for sure as far as the remaining staff or who else would be on his staff at this point. It's a little ways off from solidifying all that. He'll start though the first week of January as the head coach over there at Warren. So he'll be able to get started and get to start getting to hiring the rest of his staff there. But 39 years old, he's had a lot of good offenses at Brownsburg. He coached actually under John Hart early in his career at Warren Central, so he does have an experience at Warren as well. So although it was brief, he did have that experience previously. Also, it's been a couple days now, but excuse me, Noblesville hired John Hebert from previously at Carmel. So that was another big 6A job, and good to see John get back into it quickly. And heard early on when Dave Sharp had resigned, and then John resigned at Carmel, and they hired Kevin Wright, who actually he had succeeded Hebert. Kevin took the IMG job in 2015, and then and John was on staff as the defensive coordinator, and he succeeded Kevin there. So now kind of a reversal there, and John was able to get his foot in the door there at Noblesville. And I think talking to him on whatever night, Tuesday night, about that position, just very excited about that opportunity. Obviously, I think it's a great job. I mean, Noblesville has won in a lot of sports. They just haven't got over the hump in football. They were really close this year. I mean, I've written about that a lot, but they were right there so many times. Almost pretty much every HCC game, they were right in there within a touchdown. Just couldn't get over the hump. And John, I think his interest in the job, I think, is in part, it's a great job. It's also, I think, going to energize him at being at a different place. I mean, sometimes that's just the reality of things. Is that can kind of help you kind of get not refocused, but just kind of create some momentum and some positivity. And I think he's excited, almost just about listening to people, listening to the coaches and players there, the community members, about what their thoughts are, and then kind of going about it the best he knows how to do. But you got a great stadium there. You've got a good I think a fan base that's passionate about football. And I think that'll be a good situation for him looking ahead. So John Hebert, the new coach at Noblesville. Obviously, Eastern Hancock will be now needing to hire a coach, and that I think that'll be a pretty good job too, as far as the just the amount of talent that'll be coming back there. I know it's a smaller school, and maybe not has all the resources of some of the 6A schools, obviously, that we cover around here, but by the same token, I think that's going to be a job that there is a lot of talent coming back there. So I'll be curious to see what they end up doing there. But it seems like it's been a year of quite a few coaching changes. It seems like it goes like this at times in cycles, and you see some of the bigger openings happening, and then other years you may not have that. Obviously, Bud Wright at Sheridan, in his situation, stepping down there. Basically, I talked to Bud the day it happened, and he felt, and I give him. I mean, he can say he's the all-time wins leader, and he basically felt like they told him that he was either going to be out or he was going to leave on his own. And and I know the administration at Sheridan there said that they'd come into an agreement earlier in the season as far as that goes, but in a roundabout way, it's sort of the same thing. But Bud's gonna not be coaching there at Sheridan anymore, and he's the all-time winningest coach in the history of Indiana high school football. So that's another opening there. Southport is another one that's open in Class 6A. 6A, yeah, that's a tough one in 6A. That's a tough. They're a smaller 6A anyway, and they just have not been able to kind of get over the hump there at Southport in recent years. Like I said, Carmel has filled. Trying to think of Shortridge is open. Javon McCray has gone into administration there, so he will be. He kind of had to give that job up in order to do that. Washington hired Ramon Stallings. He has been in the building there at Washington previously, and he's been a head coach before. And I think locally that might be about all as far as the openings we had here. Obviously, Noblesville, Warren, Carmel, those were sort of the big three as far as the 6A jobs go. And those are heavyweight openings. You rarely see those come open, especially in the same year like that. So Noblesville, again, maybe not the heavyweight in the category of Warren and Carmel as far as the history and tradition, but I think could be on par with that if they can get it going, and they certainly have the resources and I think want to do that. So that will be certainly interesting how Coach Hebert gets that program going. But wanted to limit this one to football, just talking what has happened in recent the last week or so, and definitely get to more basketball stuff here in the coming weeks and months, but wanted to just make this one about football. So again, thanks for joining me here. It's another way to reach you guys, hopefully, and hope you have a great it's about 6 days as I record this till Christmas, and hope everybody has a great one, and hopefully talk to you soon.